listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you. Thankful that you're here with us. We got a great show planned for you here on this August the 9th. It's Friday, August the 9th, 2024 edition of Sudbury News Talk. It's Sudbury News and Views, a live conversation with people that come on and want to discuss the world in which we live in, which is our community, our province, our country, our world, and all the issues that we're facing. It's your conversation on your station, CKLU 96.7 FM, and also cklu.ca online. You just click on the Radio Player Canada app and you can stream us. You can also download the Radio Player Canada app, and you can take us with you and listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device. Yes, you can. Sorry to sound really excited about that. Just I had to move my microphone and I had to prolong what I was saying while I moved my microphone. Anyways, some behind the scenes information here. Also, you can catch us on facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. That's where we live stream each and every day. Make sure to comment on those platforms, because we'll do our best to get your comments read for those listening on the radio or online, and get them on the screen for those watching either live or on demand afterwards at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Sudbury.news, our website for news, aggregating all of the local news into one website here in town. It's a service that we have for the Sudbury community for local news, CBC, CTV, Northern Ontario, Sudbury.com, Sudbury Star, all come onto one web page. And maybe we'll have a Francophone, well, we need to have a Francophone section shortly, and we'll also have all the Francophone news aggregating into one location as well for our Francophone community. We'll have an Indigenous section very shortly. We'll have a very wise contributor who will inform us as to all things Indigenous on our website. So those are things to look forward to. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow all of our social media channels, and share this show as much as you can to get the word out to others so they can become part of the conversation as well. Today, we're diving into our climate change Friday topic of the day, which every Friday we talk about climate change, and it's a hot topic these days. No pun intended, or pun intended, and the a lot of people feeling that the conversation might be over in terms of what we make of climate change, but it's indeed not over. And we'll show that today. We'll actually witness a debate, a climate change debate, something that's very rare these days. A fellow by the name of Paul Burgess from the UK. If you haven't seen him before, check him out. He's open to debating people about it. Here he debates a young man from an organization, I think it's called No More Oil, something like that. Anyways, we'll get to that. And I think they're even a political party in Great Britain, but I might be wrong on that. Anyways, he has a short clip on his debating with a young activist, and it's really good to hear the two sides and really unpack, because it's something you don't hear very much, is debating any of this, right? Because the science is settled. The conversation is done. We need to act. Those are the three talking points we hear all the time, right? So let's say the science wasn't settled because true scientists will tell you it never is. And let's say a discussion shouldn't ever be over, because that's how we find things out and that's how we learn more things. So we should always discuss. And let's say we're acting on unclear knowledge and untrue facts, and we're going to act. So that wouldn't be wise. So this is where we're going to halt this whole moving forward blind faith. They call it blind faith. That's kind of like what it is. And so it's always worth a discussion, right? So every Friday, tune in if you're interested in a climate discussion. This is where it happens. And we'll dive right in. Speaking of climate, let's dive right in with starting off with the weather. We'll be back with your comments, news headlines, a deep dive into maybe a follow-up on our socialism theme this week. What socialism has brought to the world. Can we learn from it? Do we want it here? And then into our climate change discussion later in the show. We'll be back right after this. And today's weather brought to you by Duck Check. For your duck cleaning and inspection needs, Duck Check are the experts to call. 18 degrees currently. It's there's a mist out there apparently today, a mix of sun and cloud with a 40% chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm. Fog patches dissipating in the morning, and the high will be 26. Humidex will be 28. UV index is 7 or high. Tonight, partly cloudy with a 30% chance of showers and risk of thunderstorm. Low of 13. Saturday, tomorrow, mainly cloudy with a 30% chance of showers in the morning and early in the afternoon. A few showers beginning in the afternoon, risk of thunderstorm in the morning and afternoon. The winds will be gusting up to 40 kilometers per hour, high of 21. Humidex, same thing, 21. And then UV index is 4 or moderate. 30% chance of showers as well on Sunday with a high of 22. And then Monday, sunny, high of 26. Mix of sun and cloud for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 28, 28, and 27 respectively. And a look at your satellite here as of 5 a.m. shows it being rather clear in that circle in northern Ontario, but a few clouds anyway, so you can expect to see either sun or cloud depending on where you are in the vicinity of Greater Sudbury, and that's your Sudbury weather brought to you by Duck Check. Give Duck Check a call at 705-918-4848. Check them out online, duckcheck, D-U-C-T, check.com. Let them know we sent you, and you can get $100 off your next duck cleaning and inspection. They're serving the Greater Sudbury and Muskoka areas. We'll be back with news headlines, your comments, and much more right after this. Okay, we're back. It looks like we have a few people on this morning, which we want to acknowledge, give some shout outs to, and then we want to dive right deep into a follow-up on our theme of the week, which is socialism. What has it done for the world? What can it do for us? And do we want it? Do we want socialism? Many people are saying, yes, we do. We can have a form of socialism that's never been done before, and we can do what's never been done, and we can make it happen because we believe in it that strongly, right? And yeah, you may be one of those people, so stay tuned for that follow-up. Nana, good morning to you, and blessings, everyone. Sunshine emoji with an exclamation point. Much appreciated, and that's Nana on YouTube. And Judy, good morning to you as well, Judy. I mean on Facebook. Judy's on Facebook. And Marianne, good morning, everyone, from my favorite place in the north, which I'm thinking and I'm assuming you're meaning Sudbury. And liked and shared as usual. Thank you, Marianne. And Vin, morning to you. Thanks for being with us. And Belinda, good morning. Positive statement of the day. When it is time to go, be gone. Stop convincing yourself to stay in unwanted environments. Surround yourself with like-minded people. What we focus our intentions on, but continue to grow. So yeah, I just the last part there I don't know if I was having a hard time reading it or not, but I got the gist of it. And the Tragically Hip have a really great song. It's a good life if you don't weaken. And in there, it was life changing for me. They had a verse in there that said, grow where you can grow, basically. I can't remember the exact lyrics, but go where you can grow. You don't stay in places where you can't grow. Like don't keep company with those that tear you down, that prevent you from being you and doing what you need to do for your life's purpose, basically. And and that song was life changing for me. I actually changed gears of what I was doing in my life, even my profession, and switched and said, yeah, you know what? I am worth something, and I need to go where people will appreciate me and I can grow. And you might be in that same boat. Thank you very much for that, Belinda. Jerome, good morning. Sudbury, good morning to you, Jerome. Hope you're having a great morning. Belinda says, climate change, trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. Okay, and some of us look at it like that, and some of us say, yeah, the climate is changing, which I do believe it is. But why is it changing, I think, is the question. And, because there are stats out there that show, we know, everyone on any side of the debate will agree, that we've been through many ice ages and warming periods on the Earth, period, before we even showed up on the planet. So where are we on that scale now? Like, are we coming out of an ice age, which we had a reputable person, Dr. John Robson, I believe is his name, Climate Nexus discussion talks about. We're coming out of an ice age. And so what happens when you come out of an ice age? We get warmer. Yeah. But are we contributing to the warmth and the speed of it? And if we are, to what extent? What is the percentage of us contributing to it? And what could we possibly do about it? These are big questions. And these are the questions we're going to continue to ask on this show. Marianne, absolutely. It's a way of stealing more money from taxpayers. Okay, now it's interesting you say that, Marianne, because we're going to show a video today that makes that claim, that climate change, among other things, one of the main reasons of it is to facilitate the largest wealth transfer in the world from poor people to the very few elite. So we'll show, or at least this person will make a case for it, showing what you're saying. So stay tuned for that. Marianne, government is the problem and they cause the problems. And I can't disagree with that. I think they are a huge part of it. The more they get involved, the worse things seem to get. And many people out there say, no, the government's there to help us. And there's many stories in the news today, local stories about businesses and organizations getting money from the government. And that's the only place we can get money these days, because the free market can't really invest in the way that we're going. It's making it too hard for investors to invest in businesses, unless they have the approval of the government and they go along with whatever the government's flavor of the day is, and the government's handing out money. They're kind of controlling which way the economy goes, right? And it's very fake. It's very, it's not natural. And so you have the government being very involved in our economy. And how is our economy doing right now? The more the government gets involved, the worse it gets. That's just the way it goes. Less government and just less regulation. Give people the tools to do what they got to do. Let them do it. Sure, tax them. Don't tax them to blindness. Don't tax them to the point they can't even feed themselves. That's not going to help anything. Taxed 43% of our income. We spend 43% of our income on taxes, more than we spend on our necessities. That's craziness. Miles, good morning. Good weather as we follow up on a cold summer last year to a somewhat normal summer this year in Sudbury. Interesting way to look at it. It's it's warm this summer. It's kind of like what summer is expected to be, right? Warm. Wish we had a little more rain for the garden. You know what I'm saying? However, not complaining. It's been beautiful weather this summer. Grand Rising, fellow Canadians. That's Monique. Thanks for joining us, Monique. And Denise, blessings, everyone. Good morning to you, Denise, as well, and blessings to you as well. Marianne says, I am in West Nipissing. Close enough. For sure. Belinda says, oh, yes, I remember what you, in your comment there, yes. I think I did a good job of summing it up anyways. So, Marianne helping family with building a house. Ever cool. Hopefully it's not too hot out there. It's not as hot as last week, at least. I know it is hot. It's not as humid, so hopefully you're able to get by doing what you're doing outside. Monique, climate change is a hoax. Okay. I think many aspects of it is, and they're taking advantage. They're politicizing something that's possibly just a natural warming up of the earth, saying that humans contribute to it more than we do, and making us panic, and then making us act in ways that only make us poorer and probably will kill most of the planet. And we'll make the argument for that a little bit later on in the show. Stay tuned. Good morning, Patriots. That's Brian. Good morning to you as well, Brian. Thanks for being with us. I mentioned you on the show yesterday. You might have to go back and watch it on demand. Marianne, no one gets money from the government. The money comes from taxpayers. Just saying. A couple emojis there. Monique says we live in an enclosed system where everything is controlled. I do not doubt it one bit. Good morning, Sudbury. That's Monique. And thank you very much, Monique. I just wanted to, I hope I'm not singling you out. We appreciate any donations that anybody is making to the show. We know that we don't solicit anything, but any contributions are totally appreciated. Thank you so much. And you guys know who you are. We just really appreciate you on that. And so I'll just leave it at that. And Bob, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Anyone who believes in the government, believes the government is their friend, I would hate to see their enemies. Good point, Bob. Yeah, you know what? And again, I just wish I wasn't so pessimistic about government, but time tells all. You can learn from history. Go back in history and just look at history repeats itself. And our government just almost doubled in the time that Justin Trudeau has been in government, federal government, that is. And why? Have you noticed your life getting any easier, any simpler? Like all your services, when you call any government organization, do you get through right away? Are they helping you quickly? Are things getting expedited? Is your quality of life going up? Or has it gone down? Are things worse? That's what you have to be asking yourself. It just, doesn't work. Marianne, we live in the imperialism. We live in imperialism, for sure. That is true. We have not gotten clear of the monarch. They still rule us, period. Marianne says, it's pretty foggy here this morning, and that's in West Nipissing. Yeah, it should dissipate according to the weather report from Environment Canada. Belinda, government never argue with liars because they believe their own lies. We must continue to show affirmative actions. Okay, interesting. Well, thanks for all your comments. We really appreciate you. Keep the comments coming. We're going to dive right into some of our local headlines right now, and then we'll head on over to some of our follow-up on socialism, and whether it's something that we can learn from in the past, what has it taught us, and do we want it today? Okay, we're a little ahead of time this morning, which is great because we need the time. So news headlines coming to you from our news aggregator, which is Sudbury.news. Check it out for all the local news aggregated into one convenient location. Northern Ontario Fiber Festival. Yes, we have a fiber festival. Weaves farmers and crafters together. That's from CBC. The Kagawang. A story from Kagawang, also from CBC. Author and journalist Mike Stobal investigated the details of a 1965 shipwreck of a 26-foot boat named the RHU, and presented his findings during Kagawang History Day, a 90-minute storytelling event showcasing the region's heritage. Now, there are many, and I know a friend of mine does scuba diving, And there's a lot of shipwrecks around Manitoulin Island that you can go and scuba dive and check out. It's pretty interesting. Sudbury thrift store asks people to stop donating trash after dump fees increase. The Pet Save Tail thrift store in Sudbury is appealing to the people to stop donating garbage to the organization, saying it's seen a rise in unsellable donations since the city of Greater Sudbury added a $5 gate fee to the local dumps. Now that's sad. That's a sad thing. That's also from CBC. For more on that, just go to Sudbury.news, find that story, click on it. It'll go to CBC's website. You can read all about it. But that's sad. That's very sad that people are donating trash to a place that's supposed to make money by selling whatever you're donating. And going to a good cause, right? Going to our little furry friends. Sheila, good morning. Please explain what the difference is between communism, Marxism, and socialism. Okay, that's a really great point. I'm continually learning the difference between them. Marxist, or is it communism, Marxist? So Marxist communism and socialism? Is that what you're asking? The difference between the two? Or the difference between three? Because Karl Marx and his buddy made a document, a manifesto called the Communist Manifesto. In there, they outlined the governance ideology, as a solution to capitalism, basically, as a fighting back against capitalism, as an alternate form of governance. And you can read that manifesto if you want. It's very long, kind of boring, but there's some really telling videos on Facebook, I would just say, on YouTube. The difference between communism and socialism. Prager University, Prager University, PragerU. They have some really great videos talking about the difference between them. Socialism is just basically a communism light, if you will. Like it's like the free version of communism, if it was a software. It's where the government basically takes all your tax money and runs everything for you. Everything is socialized, social healthcare, socialized healthcare, government programs, and so there's a little capitalism mixed in with your socialism. Communism is full on. Government is just dictating everything you do without, it's very clear that that's the way it works. There's no facade going on. And again, that's a very terrible description between the two. And that's because you caught me kind of off guard in the morning. But we'll have a video just on socialism itself. But head just to YouTube and type in what's the difference between the two. Go to PragerU and there was a funny little saying out there that talked about the difference between the two. If you have one cow, so socialism is if you have 3 cows, the government comes and takes 2 and gives one to your neighbor. Communism just takes them all and shoots you and things like that. So there's some comedic things out there about the difference between all of the different types of governance. But yeah, I think you just do a little deep dive yourself and you'll find out. A reset. This is a reset. The end of the world we knew, for sure. New World Order. That's what Sheila says, and that is 100% right. So it'll be a socialist world bordering on communist, fascist. Again, these are all, fascism is just basically corporations and government working together, and they're in power. Socialism, government is the power. You have very little. They're the ones contributing to social programs and businesses like we see here. All these businesses getting government money to grow their businesses. Couple of stories right here. Feds make investment into women's owned businesses. Entrepreneurs can start or scale up through the Northern Ontario Women's Program. So this is an example of that. So the government believes that women are unrepresented and people won't naturally invest in women's businesses for some reason. I don't know why they think that. I think if a woman is out there and they have a great idea for a business, it's just as likely that someone's going to invest in it. And then a man's business, it just is what it is. It's a great idea. But they feel no, they are victimized as a group, and they need to take your tax money and give them a head start in the race and give them more money than someone else will. And then they'll do the same thing with black-owned businesses. We heard the commercial on CKLU before coming on. So there's they basically take people's identities and feel that certain ones are more victimized than others, and so they will invest in those groups and no one else, kind of thing. So you got this guy, let's say myself, who has a great business idea, and because the government's manipulated our economy so much by just getting involved so much by being the only ones who invest in businesses these days, so I go to them with my idea. They go, nah, you're just a middle-aged white male. You're not a victim. Sorry, can't invest in your. I know it's a great idea. Maybe if you got a black woman or someone else who's marginalized and give them your idea, then we'll give them the money. That's just, does that make sense to you? It's, again, government doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Sure, there could be victimized groups out there. Sure. But give them the tools. You don't favor one over the other and give one money and you don't give the other money. It is what it is. It's, again, sometimes there's a fine line between socialism and communism is the real answer, Sheila. People need to realize we are in a war. It's a different war. No physical weapons. It's a war of information and ideology. This is Marianne, by the way. They do not change. Sorry, they do wars to change the way that we want to change. They do wars to change the way the way they change. They do wars the way they want to change the way a country operates. Now, why I had a hard time reading that, I have no idea. Sorry about that, Marianne. I kind of butchered your comment. Miles says, like a drug, socialism is like a gateway drug to communism, for sure. And there's more on that coming up later. So continue to comment, guys. Keep the stories going here on our... So here you go. More federal investments. So feds invest stronger ecosystems in the north. The federal and provincial governments are making a joint investment of $61 million of your money to plant trees on Crown land in the Sudbury area. The last I saw on my property, there's a lot of trees. And if you don't cut the grass or you don't maintain it, trees will just pop up on their own. I was like, now we're paying people to go out and plant trees. I mean, trees will just grow like weeds. I don't know the necessity of paying $61 million to plant trees. I don't get it myself. I don't get it. Like, if you just let something be by itself in Northern Ontario, there'll be overgrowth of everything. Trees, shrubbery, you name it. It'll grow. Hey, and with the increase in carbon out there, it'll really increase the growth even more, right? So I don't know why we're paying $61 million to plant trees on Crown land. Anyways, that's about the end of that. Speed cameras are up. We know that, right? The new speed cameras, the new locations. You got Garson Coniston Road, Howie Drive between Somerset and Downing, Bancroft Drive between Bellevue and Kingsway, Moonlight Avenue between Claude Street, and Gagne Street, Bancroft Drive between Hazelton Drive and Estelle Street, and then McRae Heights between Robin Avenue and Hubert Street. As you enter McRae Heights from Sudbury, you get up on the hill. And as soon as you get up on the hill, the camera's almost immediately on your left. And so the city's released, their report saying they're so happy that they're working. They're actually slowing people down. Are people surprised they're slowing people down? Are they making us safer is the question. So we want to know, are these cameras making these areas safer? Are they making our city safer? Show us the data. Where's the beef? Show us. They're showing us the data of how it's slowing people down, which we don't need. We know it's slowing people down. We don't need any of that. Now, let's switch gears and let's have a little follow-up of our this week's theme on socialism. We talked a little bit about that on the show already this morning. So here's a young lady who we've seen before talking about socialism. She would know a thing or two. She's lived in socialism. We'll be back right after
Socialism is responsible for 100 million deaths, more people than fascism.
A single rocket hitting the center of the city killed 11 people.
It also increases poverty. So why does it appeal to so many people?
Democratic socialism is about
Young politicians say socialism will help the poor.
that in a modern, moral, and wealthy society, no person in America should be too poor to live. That's what I think.
That seems simple.
Seems pretty simple.
Don't they know that socialism creates more poverty?
The oil-rich country is now leading Latin America in what is called acute malnutrition.
Even people who understand that socialism is bad for the economy may not know that socialism almost always leads to violence.
120 people were killed during 2017.
Why does socialism lead to violence? Socialism gives absolute power to the state. No one is allowed to own private property or trade. Yet everywhere under socialism, people still do.
Marianne is able to find a listing for diapers. The black market online price is almost $10 cheaper.
People have to trade in the black market to survive. But then government gets violent. They throw some of them in jail.
My father was a political prisoner for almost a decade because he's in his 20s, sold soaps and perfumes, and did not want to relinquish all his profits to the government.
Capitalism sucks. Capitalism.
Today in America, capitalism is vilified. But if capitalism is so bad,
Why hasn't there been a mass exodus out of America because of capitalism? I'm sorry, you just don't see it.
Socialism is like the perfect excuse for someone who wants to rule an authoritarian regime.
as people rebel against government controls, the politicians, to preserve their power, use violence to stop them.
And they threw me on the floor and they started kicking me.
They tortured him, asking who organized the protests. How did you answer?
I said the people are just tired of Daniel Ortega.
Ortega has governed Nicaragua for 22 of the last 39 years.
In Nicaragua, people have again fallen for Daniel Ortega and his socialist promises.
¿Cuál es la alternativa?
But under his policies, Nicaragua has gone from one of Central America's safest countries to one of the most dangerous. In Venezuela, where there are similar protests, this man was a mayor in Caracas.
The Minister of Interior Affairs was calling me several times a week, asking me to use the police department that I was in charge of to go against protests in Chacao.
The mayor refused to have his police punish the protesters, so he was threatened with jail. He then escaped to America. Why do you think Venezuela followed the same path when we had Cuba's example for decades and it was terrible?
Yeah, well, it seems to me we're not able to learn. They will always be dreaming about the future and never delivering, and people keep falling in love with that kind of crap.
They do. Socialism repeatedly leads to violence, and yet, around the world, people praise it.
I don't think they realize how deep socialism is involved in all that.
This man fled Nicaragua. He understands.
America is a great country, and people really don't appreciate it much. They should travel a little more to poor countries to really get a feeling for what they have here in the United States. Look around, just look around, you know, and really get some knowledge.
So there you go. So a lot of people chiming in here on communism, probably looking up the different definitions online and sharing them, or they already know different definitions of them. So I appreciate all your comments. They're very appreciated. We now want to look at the world, as we get to be a more globalist society. What type of governance are we looking towards? Like, is it going to be a free market? Is it going to be capitalism? Is it going to be open and free? Or is it going to be a more socialist or a more communist type of world? And how does climate change work into that, right? But here we have from the, anyways, we'll let this young man introduce himself. He'll talk about how climate change is used, it's politicized and used as a form of wealth transfer in the world. And it's governments that are doing it from the highest levels. So again, money coming from taxpayers going to wealthy people. And he'll make the case here. So if this is something that interests you, listen up.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Climate Realism video series. Today, we're going to talk about what climate change is really about on a global scale. So every year we have these climate conferences. There was Paris, Copenhagen, Cancun, they're all over. And you get people like Greta Thunberg showing up yelling, "How dare you?
How dare you?"
And Leonardo DiCaprio showing up in a private jet, mind you, telling us that climate change is an existential crisis. Obviously, you got Al Gore. How could you miss Al Gore? You gotta have Al Gore. But we're told that climate change is, this huge existential crisis. It's going to doom humanity, and they're going to solve it at these climate conferences. The thing is, these conferences aren't actually about the climate. What are they about? Wealth redistribution. Now, obviously, that's quite the claim. But don't take it from me. Take it from former United Nations climate official Otmar Edenhofer. Now, he said, one has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. This has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore. Edenhofer co-chaired the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's working group on mitigation of climate change from 2008 to 2015. That was a word salad. Now, in the same interview, he said, "The climate summit in Cancun at the end of the month is not a climate conference, but one of the largest economic conferences since the Second World War." And to be clear, he is referring to the 2010 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Cancun. So I said that on a global scale, climate change is really about wealth redistribution, and the United Nations official that we just quoted was saying these are economic conferences. Well, it comes down to a system called emissions trading. Emissions trading is where a nation is given a certain amount of permits that allow them to emit a certain amount of certain pollutants, namely carbon dioxide. I put it in air quotes because carbon dioxide isn't dooming humanity, so I don't know if I'd call it a pollutant, but whatever. Now, where this gets interesting is that countries can actually buy and sell permits from each other to allow more or less emissions. Now, the way that you can actually use this system for wealth redistribution is that you can give an equal number of permits to, say, the United States and South Africa. Then the United States, actually first let's check out how much each country emits. You can see that in 2018, the United States emitted 5.41 gigatons of carbon dioxide. South Africa emitted only 0.46 gigatons. So if you give an equal number of permits to the United States and South Africa, the United States will purchase the majority of South Africa's permits so they can continue with the status quo. South Africa never needed so many permits, so they're not emitting that much, so they'll just sell them away. It's just free money for them. And what you end up doing is you've created a system where you are, again, redistributing wealth from the United States to South Africa. Now, what's interesting is that when you do this, you're not actually just taking money from the United States. What you're doing is you're taking money from the U.S. taxpayers. So you're taking money from people like you and me, and then you're giving it to other third world nations. Now, that's a very moral idea, I guess, if you think it's moral to take money from people and distribute it to other nations against their will. And again, you still allow countries to operate as they have been operating. They'll just buy permits from other nations so they can continue to emit as much as they want, and you're, again, just redistributing wealth. One example of an emissions trading system is the Kyoto Protocol. Now, the Kyoto Protocol is an international treaty aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It entered into force on February 16, 2005. Under the Kyoto Protocol, the emissions trading system was put into place, but there's other systems put into place in these international treaties which benefit the creators of these treaties and the elites within a nation and don't actually benefit the people. So let's get into that. One aspect of the Kyoto Protocol is that countries can earn additional emissions permits by investing in so-called green technologies. So if a nation spends their taxpayer money on companies that are promoting, green technologies, then they can emit more carbon dioxide. So an example of these perverse incentives comes down to one of my favorite people, the leading voice of climate alarmism, actually probably the second leading voice of climate alarmism now that Greta Thunberg is still on the show. How dare you? Al Gore. For years, people have been saying that Al Gore has been getting rich off of climate change. And these people are right. But the question is he doing it in a way where he's investing in companies where people are just purchasing the goods because they create a good product, or is he investing in companies that are receiving money from the government? Now, I have a feeling you know where this video is going, but let's get into it. So Al Gore invested in a company called Silver Springs Network. In 2010, the United States government sent $560 million to Silver Springs Network as a means to subsidize supposedly green technologies. Now, Al Gore profited immensely from these subsidies. Now, what Al Gore says is that he's just acting as a businessman and he puts his money where his mouth is. He puts his money with green technologies. Well, that's not entirely true. So, tangent time. Let's get into Al Gore. In 2013, Al Gore sold his TV network, Current TV, to Al Jazeera for $500 million. Now, that doesn't sound bad in and of itself, but what's interesting is the money behind Al Jazeera. Now, Al Jazeera is primarily funded by the nation Qatar. Qatar receives the majority of its money from fossil fuels, which it sells around the world. So essentially, Al Gore took his Current TV network, a leading progressive network, and then sold it to Al Jazeera, collected $100 million personally, all of which is fossil fuel money. And it's not like Al Jazeera just kept pushing out the Current TV line of programming. If they did, Al Gore could at least say, yeah, it was a bit of an iffy deal, but we're still pushing out the progressive message on climate change. No. What Al Jazeera did is they completely scrapped Current TV, used its distribution network to launch Al Jazeera America. So what happened here is that Al Gore started a progressive news network, sold it to Al Jazeera, which is funded by Qatar, received $100 million in fossil fuel money, and then Al Jazeera scrapped Current TV, launched Al Jazeera America, a news network funded by fossil fuels, which is probably out there pushing a pro-fossil fuel message. Hypocritical much? The reason we went on that whole tangent is to talk about how countries can use taxpayer money to invest in supposedly green technologies to receive more permits to emit more. Now, the people that come up with these treaties are often the people that are invested in the companies and get to determine which companies they invest in, and they get rich off of it. Al Gore is one of these people. Al Gore was the vice president when the Kyoto Protocol initially was come up with. So on a global scale, climate change is about wealth redistribution. Using emissions trading, we can create markets which they force rich nations to send the taxpayer dollars to poorer nations. And they're a way that we can have the people who come up with these plans invest your taxpayer dollars in companies that makes them rich. When you really put it all together, it's a fairly insidious system. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you haven't noticed, I've started putting a lot more work into every video and actually releasing videos a little less frequently. It's performing a lot better this way, so it seems that everyone's cool with this.
And we really appreciate the work that he put into that, because it's quite a bit of work, actually. And I think it's very telling as to the economics of climate change. Like a lot of these leaders, they know where the money's going because the government's the only one who invests in things these days. They know what they're going to invest in, and then they have a friend, or they have a company, or they have a friend's company that they might get kickbacks from. Well, they get kickbacks if they invest their own money in those companies that then they make policy to invest the government's money, your money, into the company, and then they make the money through their investments. So they know that company X, that's the new climate company out there, it's the choice of the government. They know that's who they're going to invest in, and so they invest in that company, and then they give them your money in tax dollars, and they make the interest. They make the money off the investment. I hope I explained that okay. So because they're in government and they're pushing these new green initiatives, they have friends that make green companies, then they use your money, your tax money, to invest in these green companies, and they personally go and invest their money in these green companies, and they get return on the investment because they're getting free money from the government. It's not real. It's not a real economy. It's just propped up from government contributions, your money, and they're getting rich off of it, right? So it's should be very illegal. First of all, we should be very, very upset at this.
In the newsletter, we also bring some scorn for Canada's Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, who got into quite a spat with Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer, or PBO, at the beginning of June over information that the ministry had provided to him that showed that they were lying about the economic impact of their carbon tax and that they had forbidden him to reveal. The administration deployed all the usual nasty political tools of denial, evasion, and partisanship, only to be forced by an impending motion in Parliament to release the data, and it was even worse than we thought. As Blacklock's reporter put it, quote, the figures contradicted repeated claims by Cabinet that its tax was revenue neutral and created jobs, end quote. And how it contradicted them. It actually showed that the tax would knock something between $20 billion and $30 billion a year off Canada's GDP, and they knew it. But it's important to grasp here that the minister and his colleagues are not hoaxers caught in a lie, but zealots with a higher cause. In releasing the figures, Guilbeault continued to insist that the tax was for our own good, indeed a bargain. Just not one the peasants were well placed to understand. So, he and his colleagues used the usual Canadian Jedi mind trick about how you mere voters don't need to see that information. Unfortunately, this time it didn't work. The minister's main line of defense was, quote, this analysis does not take into account the benefits of investing to fight climate change, end quote. And we're tempted to say, yes it does, since those benefits are zero. But apparently Guilbeault has, or thinks he has, some arcane knowledge of the secret benefits of this enormous sacrifice, and they just don't go talking much about the sacrifice, lest it alarm the sheep. Hey there, if you're one of the 40%...
So there you go. So sorry about that. The clip came in, unbeknownst to me. I didn't even click on it, but it just seemed to just play on its own. That's Dr. John Robson from Climate Discussion Nexus, showing, again, how the government, they're so hell-bent on collecting this money, and in Canada, through the carbon tax, right? And maybe why they're so adamant about it is because they're getting rich off of it, is one of the reasons. Whether they believe it or not is kind of a side thought, because if you looked at their personal investments, if we should, because they're public servants, and it should be transparent where they invest their personal money, you would probably find he's investing it in the same companies that he's taking the money from our carbon tax, which right there showed that it's very harmful to the economy. But, you know, there's a reason why it's harmful to the economy. You need to sacrifice so I can get rich, is what it really boils down to. Or you can say you need to sacrifice so a few people can get rich off of this whole thing. And whether you believe in climate change, that it's an existential threat, that the world is on fire, that we're all going to die, it's Armageddon, it's the worst possible case scenario, or not, why should these guys be getting rich off of it in the meantime? So that's my question. If they are, call it out, call a spade, and just be transparent with it. So at least in the public, they could at least then make the conclusion from the facts that these people probably have some ulterior motive to pushing this agenda, right? Like if you were going to make $1 billion or $500 million or $1 million for that matter, wouldn't you kind of maybe push something along in order to get that money? Even if it wasn't true, you knew at the end of it, you'd be filthy rich, and you'd be getting filthy rich with a bunch of your friends who are in on it too. And so you take all your wealth together and you can all go on, get a deal on private jets because you're going to buy them in bulk. You're going to vacation together with each other's families. You're in this together. And so you kind of have a collective reason to lie, and you all benefit individually by getting rich off this stuff, right? So he admitted all the things that report came out and said, and then muzzled the people who made the report from actually coming out and sharing their findings. But eventually they had to come out and say what was going on with this carbon tax. And then, yeah, but we got to tell people it's for their own good, even though it's going to tank the economy. We're going to go into a recession and then a depression. It's needed so that I can get rich, and that, we're fighting climate change. I'd rather them just leave things alone, and let nature kind of take care of itself, because I think nature is smarter than Stephen Guilbeault. I just really do. I think Mother Nature is smarter than Stephen Guilbeault. I'll be on record saying that. And I think history will prove me correct. And they're not going to fight climate change. You know, we're fighting poverty. We're fighting drugs. How are all those things going for us? You know, the war on drugs. Is drugs getting any less out there? Are people getting any less addicted? The war on poverty, the war on homelessness. How is that going for us? We just had a report come out in Sudbury saying we're not doing too well. 2 people were housed last year, or this year so far, out of the 200 and so people that are on record that are homeless. There's more people than that. It's just on the record. There's about 200 plus people that are homeless in the town, in the city. And 2 of them got housed. That's how we're doing with that. So how are we going to do with the weather, the climate, for crying out loud? Like, what are we actually going to do? We're planting some trees. We're spending $61 million to plant some trees on Crown land, you know, which trees automatically grow on their own. There was a microburst out just north of the city at a provincial park a few years back, and it looked devastated. All the trees were down, almost like nothing there. There were no initiatives to plant new trees or anything. You drive by there now, you can't even tell where it happened because the trees naturally grow. Where there's other trees naturally grow on their own. Where did trees come from before man came around? Trees were here before us. You know? Like really, come on, give your head a shake. So, hope everyone has a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I tried to have as many videos. I even had a couple more videos ready to go. We didn't get into the climate debate, to which Paul Rogers, if you look him up on Facebook, Paul Rogers, Paul Burgess. Paul Rogers is one of my favorite singers. Paul Burgess, he's a climate guy. He very knowledgeable about the climate, and he'll debate people on it. And so check him out, Paul Burgess, on Facebook or YouTube. And he debated a young man from No More Oil, I believe, was the activism group. They throw soup on paintings and stuff like that to get publicity. Anyways, check it out, and maybe we'll have a segment from it next Friday. But until next Friday, we'll try and accumulate some videos. If you have any kind of cool videos that have to do with climate and this discussion that we can have on the show, send them to sudburynews@gmail.com. If you take exception to anything that's said on the show, drop me an email at sudburynews@gmail.com or message me on Facebook. Some people have done that. Please don't call the radio station asking for me to call back. Just message me on Facebook with your number if you want me to call you, and we'll do that. Not a problem. Or email me at sudburynews@gmail.com. Thanks for all the emails that you do give me and the contributions that you guys make. I'm so appreciative of it. And thank you so much. This show is for you. It's your show. You guys are the show. And we try to facilitate the conversation as much as possible to collectively gain knowledge and understand the world that we live in, which is not an easy thing. It's more and more complicated these days. So have a wonderful, safe weekend, everyone. Stay tuned, and we'll be back same time, same place, God willing, on the same platforms and same stations on Monday. So have a wonderful weekend. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. Ciao, everyone.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.